Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are driving the brand new Mazda CX-30, or Mazda how the Japanese would say it, but I'm gonna say Mazda today because it feels a lot more natural. If I would try to say Mazda, I'd just be concentrating on that for the rest of the review. So what is the CX-30? It's just another one of those tiny crossovers you're gonna see on public roads everywhere in the near future, because everyone seems hell-bent on buying crossovers and SUVs these days. There's a point to be made here because I understand why people prefer these cars, but at the same time I have a personal preference of my own. I prefer smaller vehicles, lower riding vehicles, but I'm gonna delve into that a bit later on. So the CX-30 might be named a bit peculiarly, if you will, but that's because this car fits in between the CX-3 and the CX-5. Since that's the case, normally you would think Mazda would call it CX-4. But the truth of the matter is the CX-4 was already being used on a car that Mazda sells in China. That's already called CX-4, and it's a completely different car. So they decided to adopt a different name for this car. So they went with CX-30. Naming aside, this is a car built on the same platform as the Mazda 3, the current Mazda 3. So it comes with its drawbacks and its advantages at the same time. Among the disadvantages is the fact that you don't have an independent rear suspension on this car, which makes it ride a bit rough over uneven surfaces. At the same time, it's shorter. The CX-30 is shorter by 4 inches compared with the Mazda 3. So that makes it a bit less roomy inside. But it does get all the new engines, all the technology the Mazda 3 has, like, you know, blind side alert, automatic emergency braking, and so on. So all these assistive systems that help out in traffic and on the highway. So, you know, pros and cons. In terms of exterior design, it looks absolutely brilliant. If you ask me, it's the best looking crossover in this segment by far. It still follows the Kodo styling system implemented by Mazda a few years back. It's a way of designing cars that inspire emotion using old cultural Japanese teachings. So it looks really good. If you saw a Mazda in the last 5 years, you know what it means. It looks aggressive up front, huge grills dominate the front fascia. You have very sharp lines up front at the headlights, but at the same time you have flowing lines on the sides of the cars and in the back, where the stoplights basically look like eyes. It's quite amazing how they managed to pull this off. The car wheel driving is dressed up in the Soul Crystal red color, which I think is the best one you can get on this car. It is an optional extra, and it costs roughly 750 euros depending on the market you're in, but it looks absolutely brilliant. The car wheel driving also has an optional 18-inch wheels, which are pretty good, look good, but I would stick to 16-inch wheels because they make the ride more comfy and they are cheaper to run because tires will be cheaper, everything will be cheaper with smaller wheels. That's personal preference though. I know some people will go for the 18-inch wheels because they look better, and that is fine by me. Now, inside the cabin, everything follows a strict minimalist recipe. It's basically very clean cut. The materials used are absolutely brilliant, especially for this segment. I bet this interior could give the Volvo XC40 or the BMW X1 a run for their money. I think this feels and looks a lot better than the X1, for example. And to say that a Mazda interior looks better and feels better than a BMW interior does say a lot about how much they invested into this car. You have a layered dashboard here, wrapped in something that feels like leather, but I'm not certain it is leather. Anyway, it's soft to the touch, really soft to the touch. Feels really, really good. Everything is clean cut. You have air vents in front of the passenger, air vents on the sides of the instrument cluster for the driver. You have a simple climate control system here, and that's it. You only have one screen in this car. And this minimalist approach is a winner for me, because lately I've been getting a bit bothered by all the screens, the submenu, the lights and everything inside German premium cars. So this is a welcome change of pace, if you ask me. We have a screen, as I said, an 8.8-inch infotainment screen. The infotainment system is really easy to use. You have a rotary knob here that allows you to control everything. That's not a touch screen, by the way. So if you're stretching out just to reach it, it's not gonna work. You have to use this. It has a couple of shortcuts and the volume button that doubles as a next back button, and that's it. And it works. The animations are simple, nothing too complicated. The submenus are very well structured. Everything looks and is great and is easy to use. That's important in my book. You also get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that makes it even easier to use everything. Now, as for the instrument cluster, it's also old school. Everything is analog. At first, when you get in the car, you think that even the speedometer is analog, but it's not. The speedometer is actually digital, but looks analog, and you can change what's displayed in it. You can go for a classic speed dial, or you can have information about the trip you're on displayed in it, or you can turn it into a completely digital look to have the speed shown digitally, and other information about the assistance systems on the car working and what they are doing. So it's really easy. The rev counter is analog and to the left, looks really good, easy to read. I mean, you can't really ask for more. And I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. I'm not kidding. I love it because it's so simple. It's minimalistic and simple to read. You have every bit of information you want shown right there, and you can't really ask for more. We also have a head-up display which uses laser technology, and I think it may be the first head-up display that can be read easily with sunglasses on. I don't know if you noticed, but most head-up displays have an issue with polarized sunglasses. They tend to get pretty much unreadable whenever you put your sunglasses on. But now with this one works really great. Has all the vital information you need. The car has a camera up here that reads the speed signs and shows you the speed limit. It shows you the speed you're doing. And if you have the cruise control set, it shows you the speed you set on the cruise control and so on. And if you have the navigation turned on, it will also show you the next steps according to the navigation system. So really great setup. I love it. There's plenty of room up front. The seats are comfortable. We have the textile seats. You can get leather seats if you want to, heated seats and so on. The seats do offer a lot of support, lateral support. They are well bolstered. The seat is wide enough even for people with wider buttocks. So it's really comfortable. You can adjust them in a number of ways. You can get electrically adjustable seats, but I'm not a big fan of electrically adjustable anything, to be honest, except for maybe the side mirrors. I prefer old school seats that you can adjust on the fly. I hate waiting for a seat to move forward with me on it. And I also hate the fact that all those mechanisms inserted in the seats to make them electrically adjustable way down the car. So I prefer a much simpler setup like this one here. You can also get the sunroof if you want to, and so on. So sitting in the back, that's going to be a big question for people buying this car. So as I said, this car is 10 centimeters shorter than the Mazda 3, and it shows especially in the back. With my seat set up in my comfortable driving position, so I can reach the clutch and the brake as I should. I'm a 6 feet tall guy, and if I would have to sit behind me, I wouldn't have a lot of room left. As a matter of fact, I got in there earlier today, and there was just no knee room. My knees were pressed up against the back seat, against the seat back. So there's not a lot of room. Headroom was decent. I didn't touch the roof, but I was really close. Anyway, better than a legroom. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. I think this car appeals most to young families, families with small kids, young kids, that would fit in the back. You have ISOFIX points in the back, both on the left and on the right. They're easy to access. The door openings could be a bit bigger to allow you more room when you're fitting the child seat in, and also when you're getting in as an adult. But as I said, I don't think this car is meant to be used for adults, but more along the lines of 2 adults and 2 kids or something like that. So that's something you need to keep in mind if you're looking for a Mazda CX-30. As for the driving, well, it's been a while since I last drove an naturally aspirated engine. So Mazda, as you might know, is quite determined to avoid switching to turbocharged engines. The entire industry is doing it because they have to keep up with the legislation in regarding emissions coming from personal cars. And most manufacturers simply went with turbocharged engines because they have lower emissions and better fuel economy. But Mazda knows that turbocharged engines, with all their complicated electronics and filtering technologies and so on, EGR valves and so on, they are trickier to maintain. They are seriously more complicated and less reliable. So they stuck to their guns, and they are still making naturally aspirated engines for most, I think, the entire range. They recently launched Skyactiv X, which is a petrol engine technology that makes it run in a diesel cycle at times. I will talk about that when I get that engine for reviewing purposes. But on this car we have the Skyactiv G. This car is fitted with a 2-liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine, making 150 horsepower and a manual gearbox. In the range you also have a 120 horsepower mill that's just the same size but less power, and you have the Skyactiv X models with 180 horsepower. And I have to say, this engine is a peach. I love the gearbox. That's the main highlight of this car, to be honest. The gates are really close together. It's very precise and not rubbery at all, as I saw on other cars. The clutch is soft, but at the same time you feel it connect. You feel when it grips. So when you depress the clutch, you actually have some feedback, even though the pedal is light. And that light pedal helps you around town where you're going to use this manual gearbox. And I found this actually quite okay to drive in rush hour. It wasn't bothering me at all. The engine is very docile and very quiet, up to about 3,000 RPM. Being so quiet, it means you won't get too much noise inside the cabin because the suspension is very quiet as well. You only hear the engine above 3,000 RPM whenever you want to get some extra juice out of it. So that 150 horsepower comes around at 6,000 RPM, and you have 213 Newton meters of torque available from 4,000 RPM. So the car really feels like it's moving over 4,000 RPM. But if you're using it around town exclusively, you won't feel the need to push this car too much and too often. You'll make do with shifting gears of just above 2,000 RPM. And if that's the case, you will never actually hear the engine going. As I said, it only makes it, the sound only makes it into the cabin over 3,000 RPM. So around town, the elasticity of the engine helps you cruise along. But when you get outside the city center or city limits on the highway, you do have to rev this engine up in order to overtake and so on, especially at speeds over 62 miles an hour. But that's normal because this is not a turbocharged engine that has torque, the maximum amount of torque under 2000 RPM. You have to rev it up in order to get the most of it. And revving it up makes you want to have fun with it. The suspension is a bit rough, as I said. It's a bit stiffer than I expected, but this is a passive setup. You don't have adaptive dampers on it. So they had to make a system that works both around town and when you're trying to drive this car and have some fun. So they did it. On tight bends, on a curvy road, on a curvy mountain road, this car handles brilliantly. I absolutely love it. I love the fact that I can heel and toe. I love the fact that I can rev match, and this gearbox helps out a lot. So you're having a lot of fun. It does understeer, but when you take it like to the absolute limit, the all-wheel drive I have on this car is a Haldex system, so it only cuts in when it feels like the front axle loses grip. But it works really well, and you can have a lot of fun with this car. Revving it up to 6,000 RPM and then shifting it, you feel like a racer, even though this car wasn't exactly developed to be a racer. So overall, what's the takeaway about the Mazda CX-30? Well, during my time with the car, I absolutely love it. I love the way it looks. I love the way it drives. I love the way you can rev this engine up and shift gears, and it's a lot of fun. It may not be the most spacious car in this segment, which is very heavily disputed. You have the Seat Ateca in it, you have the Renault Captur, you have a lot of choices in the segment, the Toyota CHR, the Honda HR-V, so a lot of choices in the segment, but none of them are as premium inside as the Mazda. They don't look as good. I don't think they do, at least. They might be cheaper, but you get a lot more with the Mazda. So that being said, for now, this remains my favorite in this segment. Maybe I'll change my mind later on, but for now, this is my absolute favorite in this segment, in this exact configuration, the 150 horsepower engine and the manual gearbox. That said, this has been my review of the Mazda CX-30. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sure I left out a lot of things you were curious about. Just let me know in the comment section below, and I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Until next time, ciao.